Marriage counselors of Reddit. What's the stupidest reason a couple has made an appointment? My anger management group facilitator told us a funny story about a couple that came in for counseling. The husband wanted to write a book. The wife said she would work and do everything around the house for a year while he worked on his book. So he quit work and wrote his book while she did everything. The book got published and was a hit. The publisher asked him to do a book signing tour. The wife was furious. She had supported him writing the book and she was done. They came to the appointment and explained the situation. The therapist asked the wife, "So what would it take for you to be okay with the book tour?" She said, "A trip to Hawaii with my sister." The husband was like, "Really? Done." The appointment was over in 5 minutes. Edit, since a few have asked. He couldn't tell us the title of the book due to confidentiality. If only it was always that easy. My sister-in-law made an appointment for marriage counseling because her husband greeted their dog before her when coming home from work. I have no option. The dogs are literally at the door, ready for me to try and not trip over them. For real. I can't even greet my toddlers first because the dogs are like, "Nah dude, we were here long before you. Get out of the way." I have to put the kids on my knees and then pet the dogs while they're jumping up at me. Husband, she forgets the laundry in the washer. Wife, okay, but I'm busy. Maybe you could put the laundry in the dryer if you see it. Husband, yeah. That's not my job. That was the least of their problems. The 1950s husband. Those are somehow abundant today. I worked with a guy in the army. He got out a year or so ago who wanted to be the only source of income in his household. He would constantly bitch and moan about how she did nothing all day and only spends his money. But when I suggested that he tell her to get a job, I figured that would solve both issues. No, he vehemently defended his position of "I'm the man. I bring in the money so she doesn't have to work." I think I facepalmed so hard that day I bruised my forehead. My specialty is children and families. But during the pandemic I was assigned whatever came in because it has been super busy. One lady called and spoke with me first about how her husband was horrible at communication and never listened to her. She asked for a couples session. As soon as she ambushed her husband with a "There is a therapist on the line that wants to speak with you," her husband screamed, "You called a therapist because I don't want to paint the house purple." She wanted me to convince him to paint the house purple, and like any normal human who sees colors, he refused to listen to her. Ah yes, the superpower of having eyeballs. Oh vacuous ROM. Grant that woman eyes. Edit. Thank you for my first award, kind stranger. Reading some of these makes me wonder if counseling would have saved my marriage. Then again, I think actually wanting to save your marriage is a prerequisite for marriage counseling to be successful. My counselor called me and told me that in 25 years of practice had never had to make this call, but that if I didn't get out of the marriage my life was in danger and that I was probably married to a sociopath. Turns out I had literally just left him. But damn, was that confirmation I needed to get out. So, counseling doesn't always fix things. Sometimes it's just the perspective you need to see that things are broken beyond repair. I was a life coach for a bit before I realized it was more administrative work than I wanted to do. I wanted to help people, not fight in organizational political fights. During my brief time, one of my clients was really struggling with the color of dog that her husband got for her. She wanted a specific breed of dog since she was a kid, and her husband did a bunch of research and got her one from a good line of the breed. But its coat was darker than the dog she imagined, and she was / really struggling with it. We had a few sessions about expectations clouding your happiness, and it turns out the dog was the most explicit example of much bigger issue she had in her life. But I had to seriously put my WTF on hold when she told me about the shade of her dog being a problem. My uncle and his wife. Reasoning: she lost a frying pan. I mean, I get that it's a stupid argument, but how the duck do you lose a frying pan? Cupboard, hob, next to sink, into sink to soak, next to sink, because other things need washing. Angry wife puts all the washing in the garden out of spite. because husband never does the ducking washing up, and the kitchen is a ducking mess. Raccoon steals frying pan. I can totally see this sort of thing coming up between my husband and I. He refuses to learn where anything in our kitchen lives. So if he unloads the dishwasher and doesn't know where something lives, instead of asking me, putting it to one side to ask later, etc., he just shoves it somewhere random. I spent a month looking for my spatula once. He denied point blank that he had touched it. Eventually I found it wedged under a sugar bag in my baking cupboard. He denied he'd put it there. We are the only 2 people in the house and I know the spatula lives in the goddamn ducking drawer with the other utensils. The argument on its face is about a lost spatula, but the reality is the fight is about why it went missing in the first place, and the subsequent denial of involvement in said loss. Edit. Cannot believe this is the comment that blows my inbox up. Thanks to all the armchair therapists who think they've nailed my marriage down, based on an anecdote about something mildly annoying my partner does. Bigger thanks to all the people who've clearly been or are married who get that living with another human being isn't perfect, and sometimes they do 1 or 2 tiny things that irritate the shit out of you, and sometimes a rant feels good. Everyone concerned, please rest assured I'm not trapped with an emotionally abusive husband. Just a bit of man-child whose mum should have done a better job, but who overall is a good dude. A pimp and one of his sex workers scheduled a session to see me because they were having jealousy issues. They were legally married, and he was unhappy with how she couldn't leave work at work. Best couple ever. What does that mean? Does she call her clients in her downtime or talk about work with her husband? That has so many layers of dysfunction. I'm intrigued. I want stories. It's always the dishes. I don't see couples anymore because I cannot have one more conversation with adult human beings about the various philosophies of dishwashing. Dad told me that the secret to a happy marriage was a dishwasher and 2 bathrooms. Cheaper in the long run as well, both in water saved and in therapists. Couldn't decide on which chicken to buy for their chicken farm, like which specific chicken, or which breed of chicken to raise in general. We have 6 chickens. I wanted 2 ornamental chickens, funny looking but questionable egg layer, and my husband was like, why though? But he loves them now. He enjoys laying in the hammock and watching them with their chicken poppers run around. He posts more pics of these chickens than the regular ones. Heck, even more than our kids. A buddy of mine was in therapy with his wife. She told me later that my friend, let's call him Gary, has a drinking problem. Me, wait, what? Since when is Gary drinking? I never saw him drink alcohol. That's the problem, or Gary. I hope you are fine now. Edit. It seems like I worded it in a weird way. Her issue is that he doesn't drink. I once had an ex who was an AA tell me I was an alcoholic because I and my family didn't drink much, and that was an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. The early days of recovery are weird. I feel this. I have an ex who called me a drug addict because I mentioned I smoked pot twice in college when I was 19. I was 34 when we had this discussion and hadn't touched anything since. This same guy drank all the time and I didn't drink much at all. At one point, I decided to stop drinking altogether for a bit because I wanted to drop a few pounds and those were easy calories to cut out. He screamed at me that he wouldn't have dated a non-drinker and that if I wouldn't drink with him, he would dump me. This guy was drinking nearly every single day, tried to force me into drinking against my will, and called me a drug addict for smoking pot twice 15 years before I met him. Some people are just ducking terrible. Not a counselor, but my friend is one, and a couple came to her unofficially because the wife wouldn't tell her hubby when her mum was coming over because she knew he'd be sick or out that day. Who was the monster, husband or Mill? The real question. My cousin went to counseling because her husband cuts the sandwich straight inside of diagonal. When I first heard it, I thought it was a joke. My ex-coworker once told me about an argument he and his girlfriend regularly have. Apparently, when you make a sandwich, some people care about whether the bread remains facing the same way it did in the original loaf, or if one piece gets turned around relative to the other. I don't just mean top of the loaf remains facing the same way. I mean the cut sides of the slices remain facing the slice they were originally cut from. I told my fiance about this ridiculousness and he said no. I see her point and now I have to regularly have conversations about which way bread is facing. Eater, I hate all of you. It depends on the type of bread. It doesn't make a difference with the factory style one where every slice is the same square shape. But they are not going to match up and give proper coverage if it's a curved loaf. Not that I'd refuse to eat a sandwich which hadn't been made this way. It's more of a fussiness about making it look right. I'm a counselor with teenagers and kids. A school staff member dragged these two teens into my office one day, a boy and a girl. Both were clearly upset, but definitely didn't want to talk about it with me. You could have cut the tension with a knife as they sat frozen in their chairs staring at the floor. I saw them and thought, oh duck, she's pregnant. I'm trying not to panic at how to handle the situation as I finally get them talking, and it turns out they were just fighting because he sent a text to some girl. A text. At least she wasn't pregnant. Always a legitimate concern when teens are involved. Teens producing infants and aging together. Nothing is really stupid in making the decision to come in for a couples session. But the most startling session I've had was when the couple had barely sat down and one of them informed the other that the relationship was over, turned to me and said thank you for supporting partner through this and left the office. Jesus, that's cold. I think I would prefer that scenario over we go to a fancy restaurant so you can't scream at me. I'm a clinical therapist and had a client bring in their spouse for a session. They both have sporadically treated bipolar disorder. I can only assume what a wild ride their kids are on. Poor kids. I had a woman come in for couples counseling. Over the phone she reported that her boyfriend, with the same last name, very confusing, was distant and was refusing to listen. When the session started it was just her that showed up. She went on and on about how absent he was and how he refused to see the progress she had been making in her life. It turns out the boyfriend was an ex who had a restraining order against her and lived halfway across the country from her. She was delusional and was receiving treatment for her mental health issues. She just could not get her thinking away from him and legally changed her last name to his because it would mean they would be together. She figured couples counseling was the way to work out their relationship issues. Edit. Not sure this is the stupidest, but it is definitely the most bizarre reason I have had someone make an appointment. Edit. I went to bed and this totally blew up. So, I will try to answer a lot of questions in this edit. I realized things were not adding up when first he didn't show up, and then she told me he didn't live in the same place as her, and she had not spoken with him in over 8 years. None of her story really made sense. Her sister came to pick her up, and I was given the okay to talk to her. The woman's sister had thought she had come to me for individual therapy, and told me about the stalking and restraining order as well as her diagnosis. I saw her on an individual basis for about a month, until I got her enrolled in ACT Services, which is a team of case managers that will meet her daily if needed, as well as psychiatrist, RNs and individual counseling. She still reaches out everyone once in a while and is doing well. She is holding down a part-time job and living independently now. She still thinks that that man is her soulmate and that they are spiritually together. To all the people making Orange is the New Black references, I have never watched the show. I'm sorry. No, I did not breach confidentiality because my name is not given. Her FI was not given. And no specifics were given. Also, thank you for my first awards. Whoa. How did you deal with her? We're now happily married with 3 kids. My ex-wife suggested we go to marriage counseling because she felt we needed to work on communication. I was slightly confused since we never really fought about anything and I didn't know that much was amiss. So I went with her, and we had several sessions and it basically turned into just parenting classes, since we didn't seem to have any issues to work on. Then one day she tells me she's bi and is going to go sleep with a married couple she's been friends with for a week, because that's the only thing that's going to make her happy. Would have been nice to know in marriage counseling that was the real issue she was wanting to work on, since I had no idea she was struggling with her sexuality. Guess there really was a communication issue. I had a similar thing, except the way I found out was coming home from the gym and there was another chick in my bed and wife was in the shower. It wasn't a surprise situation either. Ouch, that's rough. At least mine gave me a heads up she was gonna go do it. I told her I wasn't okay with it and that if she did it was cheating. But at least I knew it was coming. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.